So I just wanted to practice some of those because you need to know those in order to know what we're going to do today, which is order of operations, which you should be familiar with. Okay? I use the word to remember order of operations, BEDMAS. Okay? You may have heard of it as BEDMAS or BEMDAS. Okay? They all mean the same thing. When we have a whole bunch of operations going on in the question, the first thing we got to look at, are there any parentheses? And those are the rounded ones. Those are the rounded ones. And including your parentheses, because sometimes you may see these, are brackets. Brackets are the square ones. Those are actually called brackets. So when we look at a question, we look for parentheses and brackets. We see if there's anything to do inside. Okay. We're not going to look at these just yet, but we're going to look at them later. What do you think the E stands for? Exponents. Yeah.
Division and multiplication.
Right. So the division and multiplication we do together. We start on the left and move to the right. We never do division before multiplication or multiplication before division. It depends what we see first. And I imagine you guys can figure out the last one, addition and subtraction. Those are last. Again, from left to right. So right now, we're not going to worry about exponents. But now we're going to look at questions that have more than one operation. And you got to be careful with these. Just you got to see, okay, what's often students get confused between what's multiplication, what's subtraction or addition. Remember, if two numbers are beside each other and one of them is in parentheses or both of them are, that's multiplication. Okay? Only when they're separated and there's something in between and there's no parentheses, it's a subtraction or addition. So this first one, well, I've got parentheses, but there's nothing being done inside, right? It's just 3. So I don't have to worry about that. Now I look for multiplication and division. Do I see any multiplication? Yeah.
Multiply -4, -3.
And what's -4 times 3?
-12.
-12. And I still have the +5 because that addition gets done last. And therefore -12 plus 5 gives me -7. Good. I always just put 2 little bars there at the final answer. That's just what I do out of habit. There's nothing mathematical about it. Good. Okay. Let's go a little bit more challenging. Well, I've got parentheses going on, but I've got parentheses, but there's nothing happening inside. They're just around a couple of numbers. So now I go to my multiplication and division. Obviously, we don't see any division. Okay. Do you see multiplication? Yeah. What do you see? Sorry?
-2 multiplied by -4.
Yeah. Are there any other ones?
Yeah. +5 times -8.
Right. So what's -2 times -4? Just show the answer. Positive 8. Now what's +5 times -2?
Is
-10. So really the question becomes 8 minus 10. The other way, think of it, or you could look at it this way. 8 plus -10. Some of you might want to look at it this way, but remember, plus negative means the same as minus. So I just kind of skipped a step. And what's 8 minus 10? -3. Okay. All right. Next one. I've got parentheses. Is there something going on? Yep. Which means I have to deal with this first. So 10 minus 3, I'm not touching. And 7 subtract 4 is 3. Do I need parentheses around it? Imagine if you didn't put parentheses around it, you've now changed it to 10 minus 33. That doesn't make sense, does it? Whatever this answer is, it's getting multiplied by this. So it's really important to have the parentheses around because there's multiplication going on. And speaking of multiplication, that's what I do next. So what's it going to look like after I multiply? 10 minus 9, which gives me 1. Good. Okay. Now we got some brackets going on. You will notice if you've got a question with parentheses and brackets, the parentheses will always be inside the brackets. You should never ever see a question that looks like this. No. The parentheses are always furthest inside. Okay. If you see a question like that, somebody's written it incorrectly. So that means that we've got to do parentheses first, and then we've got to do brackets. And then we go to the multiplication and division, addition and subtraction. So the first thing I want to do is this. So I'm not touching the 5. I'm not touching the minus. I'm not touching this bracket. I'm not touching 6 minus. And I'm not touching the bracket on the end. All I'm doing is 2 minus 5. -3. You don't have to have parentheses around it this time because we're not multiplying it by anything beside it. So the parentheses are gone, but the brackets aren't. That's next. So I'm not touching the 5 subtract because I got to do everything inside the brackets first. What do I get when I do the stuff inside the brackets? 6 subtract -3. This becomes the same plus. So what do you get? 9. I don't need brackets around it because I'm not multiplying it by this, am I? I'm subtracting. I mean, if you put brackets around it, it's not going to make any difference. Still. So I'm left with 5 minus -4. Good. This will be the most challenging you see. This next one. Because we got stuff going on in parentheses, we got stuff going on in brackets. And then there's even some stuff outside it that we still have to do. What are you going to do first?
Parentheses.
Yeah, so I gotta do 2 minus 4. So I'm not touching anything else in the question. I'm not touching all of this stuff. All I'm doing is 2 minus 4. And what is 2 minus 4? See? -2. Do I need parentheses around it? Yes, because there's something right beside it. If you don't put parentheses, you're going to confuse it with subtraction. It's not. That -2 is still being multiplied by the -3. Parentheses are gone, or anything to do in them is gone. So now I just work on the brackets. So inside the brackets, I've got a subtraction and a multiplication. What do I do first? Right. And what is, and I'm going to take the -2, what is -3 times -2? So really it becomes 6 plus 6. Again, you could have done it in 2 steps. You could have said 6 minus -6, which becomes 6 plus 6. Still got stuff to do in brackets. Don't touch that. 6 plus 6.
12.
Do I need brackets? Yes, I do, because it's getting multiplied. This is right beside it. I need, because it's not -2 plus 12, it's -2 times 12. And -2 times 12? -24, okay. Okay. Talk about circles tomorrow, because I think this is enough right now to do some practice on. I don't want to overload you guys. Like, yeah, the first couple lessons we're going to split up, but after that, we'll be basically doing 1 lesson a class or 2 lessons every